You are now listening to the Cinema Scholar podcast.
Welcome to the Cinema Scholars podcast. This is a podcast where we're going to dive into a bunch of different films, some new, some old. My name is Steven, and I'm here with my best bud, Matthew.
Hello.
Hello.
Looking forward to this, Steven.
Yeah, this is going to be exciting. I mean, we've both been real cinephiles for so long. I mean, we sit and talk about movies all the time, so we figured we'd put some microphones out and record it and see what happens. So today we are talking about Sound of Metal, which was just released on Amazon Prime. It premiered, I think, last December, right, Matt?
Yeah, 2020.
Okay, last December 2020, so it's kind of straddled the start of COVID, but it just released on Amazon Prime a couple weeks ago, and it's been getting rave reviews, if I do say so. So we're going to dive into that film today and look at the performances, the cinematography, our favorite shots, and some of our favorite scenes. So let's get into it, Matt.
Let's do it.
What were your first impressions when you watched Sound of Metal?
Well, I think you can't really talk about Sound of Metal without immediately talking about kind of the central performance of Riz Ahmed. And I think this is kind of like his coming out party. I mean, we loved him in Nightcrawler. He was the villain in Venom, but I don't think that really kind of worked out for him in the long run, and this is kind of his first time, being the guy, being on the top of kind of the call sheet, and I think he knocks us out of the park. I mean, we'll get into kind of the character, which I had like some issues, which was more, I think, geared towards the writing than the performance, but obviously being able to learn like sign language and the drumming, and that he was really committed to this, and it really shows on screen.
Yeah, it is true. I mean, he talked in an interview about how he just did independent films for most of his young career, and then after he was coming off of Star Wars, Venom, Jason Bourne, and Nightcrawler, and then he took this film. So like he was in the studio system, and like I think you can definitely tell that he was eager to get back into his indie movie beginnings, and he talked about how he had to spend 6 months learning drums for this, and then he had to spend even more time learning how to speak ASL, which is pretty amazing. With regards to my first impressions, just based off of the trailer and then based off of the description, after I watched it the first time, I was like, that had barely anything to do with metal music.
Yeah, not at all.
And I was really excited. I thought oh, this is gonna be pretty sick, an indie flick about metal music, a drummer. I was pretty excited for the music side of it. But with that said, I wasn't disappointed at all. I was wow, that took a different turn than I expected, but one that I actually really, really loved.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't go into this really knowing anything about it. I mean, you said that you watched it and told me kind of it was worth the watch, and I kind of went into it without knowing anything about it, and I thought after he goes deaf, I figured it would be oh, they're going to try and figure this out. They're going to tour and try and make money for the surgery, and we're going to follow them kind of going all around trying to do these gigs and try and figure that out.
Yeah. And
then he ends up in this deaf attic commune for pretty much the entire second act, which was definitely a left turn, which you can get in kind of the structural things. But yeah, I didn't know what to expect, and I think on the surface, I didn't even see a trailer, and in the title, I mean, you would think music would have had a bigger role in the film, but really they don't address it that much.
Yeah, it's kind of left out. I mean, again, like I said, I didn't mind that too much, but I did think, what you said, I thought they were going to try and figure it out as a band. I thought it was an emphasis on the band, as in him and his partner Lou. I thought it was going to be them trying to figure this out, but she's pretty much absent for the middle act of this. But I mean, maybe we should just start by talking about Riz Ahmed, dude. He's fucking amazing in this role. I'm kind of eager to hear what problems you say you have with him.
Not with him.
But I appreciated his performance even more the second time around, and just how complex it is, because I mean he's a character that's kind of swapped out his dependency on drugs, because we learned that he was a heroin addict. Obviously, we learned that pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And he swaps that out for a dependency on drugs for a dependency with Lou. Like, he's codependent with her, and like he needs her. Like he says, like he's been with her for as long as he's been sober.
Right.
And so he almost views himself as like the provider for her, and it's clear that he takes pride, I guess you could say, in that. Like, he's happy to like be the one touring and like taking care of her. And
Makes a killer breakfast, by the way.
dude, he does make
Shit looks so good.
that smoothie, man. You
Not
know,
the
I love my
smoothie.
smoothies. You
But
know I
that
love my
plate he
smoothies.
leaves on the table looks so like poached eggs or something.
I wish he was my boyfriend, you know.
Yeah. And bandmate, you know.
And bandmate,
Killer.
I need a drummer like him. Anyway, so he's proud of, you know, he's dependent with Lou, but the way he portrays, like when he suddenly loses his hearing and she leaves him, like all of a sudden he's rendered completely alone and like vulnerable, and all of a sudden he's the one that's in need of a caretaker. And the way Riz Ahmed portrayed that was incredible in my mind. The like slight panic to the freak out scenes, to the nuance of him clearly it was like emasculating for him to all of a sudden be the one needing help.
Yeah.
And I can't say I'm too familiar with his other works, especially his other indie films. I really only know him from like Venom and Star Wars and Bourne, which
Nightcrawler.
and Nightcrawler. Obviously he was awesome in Nightcrawler.
Yeah.
But I feel like I didn't know enough about him that I was really able to buy his character.
Yeah. That's true.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, you got it. But I do think like the introduction of him and Lou was like really cool, where you see they do like their show or whatever, but that next morning where you just get like, they're like, damn, they're like living it up kind of, when they're doing the whole dancing thing and the breakfast, and they have these like weird like conversations about Jeff Goldblum and like flossing.
Yeah.
Like between gigs.
Just going to point out that movie theater that they're at.
Mm-hmm.
I used to pass by that every day when I would drive the kids for climbing.
Oh, really?
It's in Danvers, and it's totally abandoned, and they
Oh, wow.
use it as the opening sequence, which is pretty cool.
Let's go.
It's like the Hollywood Hits movie theater, Danvers, Mass. Shout out to my North
I didn't
Shore
know that,
folk
bro. I
out there.
thought that was like somewhere in LA or something.
No, that's in Mass. That's
Wow.
in the North Shore. Because
should
they're in
go
Boston
visit.
for the opening.
Could have recorded that here. That there.
Damn.
Danvers.
Could have.
We're live from an abandoned theater.
It's really cool, dude. It's totally 70s, and
Wow.
Yeah,
That is
they're
a
taking
great
it down
shot,
now.
dude. That was going to be one of my best shots, too, when they like,
Oof,
he
sorry about
steps
that.
out. And you got the Hollywood Hits in the background.
Mm-hmm.
And the like empty parking lot.
Yeah.
Very cool, very cool. But I wanted to point out too, just like when the hearing goes, bro, just that feeling of like panic where you like know something that no one else knows, and you like don't want to say anything and like freak people out. That was crazy.
Oh my god, when he's in the RV the next morning and he's like plugging his nose and he's coughing
Yep.
and he's trying to figure out like what's happening. I mean, that's a whole like his portrayal of panic. Like, I felt so like claustrophobic. Is that weird to say? Like, I felt claustrophobic watching this.
Yeah,
as
like
he
in
was
your own
going
head.
deaf. Because I felt like it really comes down to the sound design. Like, the sound design in this film is incredible.
Yeah.
Like, really next level. And it's like jarring at times. It's uncomfortable. It's, again, claustrophobic. It feels that way. Yeah, so when it first starts to go, and that just like dull kind of like buzz that you start to hear, like you really have to watch this film with the volume up to really appreciate it.
Yeah. I mean, I had to stop because I was doing laundry, and I like paused it halfway through, and like every sound seemed like I was so focused on the sounds around me after, because I mean, they do a good job though, where like if you did this whole movie with his hearing, it would like drive you crazy, but they do a good job of like, you know, kind of alternating in and out between just like normal sound and then like his perspective too, because that's like a really tough balance that I think they kind of nailed, where you don't get, I mean, it's frustrating, but like enough where you're more in his head than where you're just like, all right, screw this, like I can't do this anymore.
Yeah, I think they did it. They definitely balanced it well, because there were certain scenes where I feel like an audience would be like, oh, this is going on just a little bit too long. But it's like, that's the point. They want you to have to experience. They don't want to just bring you in and out so that you're more comfortable. The point is to make you slightly uncomfortable. Maybe not uncomfortable, but help you realize what it is like to go through this, to go through what Ruben is going through.
Well, and you realize how hard it is to communicate with someone when you can't hear. Like, just the whole scene in the diner is like both hilarious and also like terrifying when he's on the phone. He's like, yeah, man, like, I would say it's nice to hear your voice, but I can't fucking hear anything. I'm totally not exactly steady right now. And you're just like, damn, if you if you can't hear, because like everything, his entire life is wrapped up in his ability to be able to hear between music, which is also tied to his girlfriend, which is also tied to his addiction. And so like when you take that away from him, like you're leaving him completely vulnerable, and like he's unable to communicate with anyone, and that is like a terrible place to be in. You know,
it's scary. It's like genuinely, it makes you think twice about, like, after watching this, I was like careful not to turn my headphones up too loud listening to music.
Yeah, no more idols for you.
No, I love idols. Shout out idols if you're listening. I love you guys. Let me shoot a music video for you. Yeah, the first act of him going deaf, and the scene where he's talking, the scene where he's first at the doctor's, and the guy is doing the word test where he just reads a word and says, "Say it back to me."
Oh yeah.
And he's getting like, he got like 1 out of like 12 words. Like he just can't hear.
So dumb, bro. I would have nailed that test.
Okay. But then afterwards, the doctor is like, you know, obviously Ruben doesn't fully understand the extent of his deafness. So the doctor is like, listen, like, you need to understand that it's not coming back, and whatever you do in the next couple of days needs to be focused on preserving whatever hearing you have left, which he already said was like 28% hearing in your right ear, 24 in the left ear. Like, that is terrifying. And the look on his face, on Ruben's face, is just like,
because he's like trying to hear him. You can't help but
be terrified for him.
Yeah, and you're like, well, and that's the thing too, when you look at like the entire film as a whole. When you talk about like a character at the beginning, when you introduce a character, usually they have like some kind of lie or like misconception that they believe in. And so here you see like Ruben thinks he can get his hearing back, even though like the doctor right away just dead on says, listen, like, it's not going to happen. You can't get it back. And he, like, the whole movie, even though he goes through that whole commune thing, like, he still believes, I can get my hearing back. I can get it to where it was. And even though, you know, it takes him until the very end to finally realize that. And that's kind of when the big realization comes. But I love how they have that right away. Like, the doctor tells you, like, you already know, like, you're not going to be able to do this. But he spends the whole movie trying to do that.
That is true. I didn't really think about that. How, like, they could very easily have played it up to be like, you know, the doctor, you know, they could have never had the doctor tell him that. And then he could have spent the whole, and we would have been thinking, like, he'll get his hearing back. But they tell you, they kind of, right off the bat.
It's not happening,
that
bro.
Whole sequence, dude. Cut that.
What?
My whole sequence, I was trying to explain that and just botched it, dude.
Sounded good to me. You had enough confidence.
Thank you so much. Folks at home, write in, tell us if that was bullshit or not. All right. What should we dive into next?
Well, let's talk. We kind of went first act. What do we think? Let's talk about Joe, because we meet Joe right around the end of the first act when he goes to this attic commune thing.
Yes, Joe.
What a beast.
Played by Paul Raci, and he absolutely, in my opinion, should be in the running for Best Supporting Actor.
Absolutely.
I think his performance was incredible. Like, whoa, who's that? Is there a cat there?
Shut up.
Paul Raci was incredible in this, and I'm just going to reiterate that I think he should be in the running for Best Actor. I mean, first of all, his life story, the actual actor, Paul Raci, his life story is amazing. And it seems like he was, and he kind of said this in a few of his interviews, that he was like almost destined to play this role. He grew up with 2 deaf parents and is in a Black Sabbath cover band where he signs all the songs. It's just
it is crazy, actually, when you think about
his story is amazing. But so, I mean, like, he was obviously, he can hear, but he can speak ASL, and he's been dealing with, you know, he had deaf parents his whole life, so he's one foot in the deaf community and one foot in the hearing community.
It is actually crazy though to think he really is like meant for that. Like he is Joe in a lot of ways. That it's pretty incredible. And I think him kind of being a mentor, and it's not like the biggest like showy, flashy performance in terms of like some of the other people that have won like supporting actor or actress and like in an Oscar or whatever, but I think it's like a really subtle performance, and there are a couple moments in here that we'll get to as we kind of go along the narrative that like really well played. Like this isn't a guy who's, I don't think, had a lot of like major roles, and I think between like really it kind of is based on the chemistry between like Ruben and Joe, and that relationship is kind of, I think, almost more central than Ruben and Lou, just because Lou goes off on her own for so long.
Oh, completely. I think the chemistry is way better between them than it is between Ruben and Lou.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll get into that later when we talk about the final act. Like the chemistry between them was a little bit iffy to me, but the chemistry between Joe and Ruben is amazing. Like there are so many scenes that are, like you said, like they're not flashy, they're not over the top, they're not your typical Oscar performance, but they're so subtle, and the way he's able to communicate, like, first of all, his voice is just beautiful. Like his cadence, I don't know, something about it. Soothing, man. That guy should try ASMR or something.
Not
it's
good
beautiful.
for the deaf community.
He could read me a bedtime story. Okay. I mean, he pretty much let, like, we'll get into this, but my favorite scene in the movie, he was the one driving that. Like my favorite scene in this movie is because of him.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the first time, this is one of my favorite lines from the movie, but the first time Joe and Ruben meet and communicate through that computer, and Ruben says today, or Joe asked if he thought about using heroin since losing his hearing, and Ruben just takes a long pause and just says, "Today is not a good day." I thought that was the most beautiful thing. And then Joe kind of comes in and says, explaining the community and the commune, I guess. Is that what we're calling it? That sounds kind of culty.
Yeah, it's probably not commune. I don't know. It was a community.
It's a deaf community, I guess. But he kind of looks at Ruben and says, "We're looking for a solution to this," and points at his mind and not this, and then points to his ears. And I don't know, something about that exchange was just really beautiful.
Well, because that's on top of the doctor saying you're not getting your hearing back, dude.
Yeah.
And then Joe's also like, "You're not getting your hearing back, dude." And then he kind of, I actually think Ruben, there isn't actually a ton of conflict, I feel like, once he gets there, really, where now he kind of starts learning. I mean, he like crushes the donut and gets all mad and stuff.
Yeah, I think the initial conflict is him just being like, again, I feel like he's so emasculated by being there. Maybe emasculated, he's definitely scared, but he's also just like, I don't need help. I mean, his whole life, as Lou kind of calls it, like their gypsy life, is built on like them touring around and
self-reliance,
him taking care of her and self-reliance. So the thought of him coming to a community, let alone him being sponsored by a church, which he obviously says he doesn't want any part of, to him, that's just like, what am I doing here? And he feels emasculated, I guess. I think that's the best word for it.
Did you think he was going to go back to the place in the moment?
No, not the first time watching it.
I didn't. I mean, because he kind of like...
I mean, well, I guess because, they wouldn't just introduce that and leave it, especially after that first scene between Joe and...
But just from like a character standpoint, like without, obviously thinking of like it being a story.
To be honest, I thought he was gonna go do some drugs again.
Yeah. Okay. Because
I thought he was gonna go use and then eventually find his way back to that place.
Because one of my big things kind of is like, did he even have? I mean, did he have to be an addict? Like, I get that it's kind of part of the community and like a character trait, but I was expecting, like, can you imagine if he escaped like the community and tried to like buy drugs without knowing how to communicate? And like, I would have been so much more on the edge of my seat if he was in the real world instead of being in kind of the safe place pretty much the majority of the time. And when he actually leaves, he's got the implants, so he's not you know, in a more vulnerable position. I feel like there was kind of a missed opportunity to get him out of there and actually like experience like real trauma, or at least get close to it. Like maybe like the drug deal falls through because the drug dealer is like, I don't understand what you're saying, or something like that. But like,
what's ASL for heroin? I guess, I mean, I loved the whole second act because I just feel like it was so peaceful at their deaf community. Like, first of all, I thought it was like Vermont or something, but it's apparently Virginia.
Oof. Virginia gets a bad rap, but looks pretty good to me, I guess.
It was just so, I don't know.
Well, I feel like you're talking about him being humiliated. I feel like he would have been a little more like hesitant and push back on like joining a class of 10-year-olds or whatever. He kind of just like did it and just like looked at him and was like, all right, I guess this is happening. And it's like a Billy Madison type thing. Like ASL. Where I would have been like, man, I don't know if I could do this, bro. Like I'm like 35 in a class of 10-year-olds and they can all communicate and I can't. Like I feel like, especially because he's kind of a hothead, I feel like he would have pushed back more on that a little bit, but he kind of just took it, you know.
I think
and rolled with it.
Took it on the chin because of Lou. I mean, like, he definitely struggled. You can see him at one scene after dinner with the deaf community. He's like smoking a cigarette and just whips it at the ground, just like, fuck.
Yeah, I love that. He just goes, oh fuck. He's just like, man, this is brutal.
But soon after, he always sneaks into the upstairs room and checks email from Lou. And there's like one email that I like stopped and read it, and it was just like, I'm so proud of you, like please do this for me so we can like be together. So I feel like, and he read those emails a couple times, so I feel like he's able to find motivation through the motivation comes from him wanting to return to Lou and be able to go back to his normal life.
And for what?
I think that's where he finds it. And I feel like he also, I mean, again, we realize that this is a guy with not a lot of money who is again, super vulnerable. And I feel like I want to believe that Ruben at some point was able to just be like, I need help. Like, if I'm going to go deaf, I need to be able to communicate. And these people are offering shelter and teaching me how to communicate and live with my deafness.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I saw it. I saw it more as like, yes, he still was a little bit emasculated and really didn't want to be there. Obviously, that's pretty obvious in the early weeks of him being there. But eventually, I kind of took it as like he knows he needs help at this point. And he's getting to know the people. He's learning to communicate, so he's able to connect with more people. Drawing pictures of ladies.
And that's awesome.
That's awesome, man. I got to get that tattoo on my shoulder.
Where do I sign up?
Some of his tattoos were hilarious. Ruben's, it's just like underpants on his right shoulder.
I like scumbag over the belly button. That was
yeah.
It's a strange one.
Please kill me across his chest.
That was one of the first ones, I think.
To I can't remember his name. Some rock and roll legend that's had that tattoo or something. I don't know.
But like, I think he does get to the point where he is like, all right, I need help, and then he sees Lou performing by herself. And that seems to be what kickstarts him into like, I can't be here forever. I got to sell everything and get out there and like take my life back kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, right after he sees that, she sends him an email with a video of her performing by herself. Right after he sees that, we cut to a scene where he goes back to the RV, seemingly for the first time, sets up his drums and starts playing again.
Yep.
And yeah, that definitely kind of makes it seem like he's kicking it into gear and being like, I need to get back out there. Lou needs me. I need Lou. Maybe he feels like he's worn out his welcome. Not worn out his welcome, but he feels like he's reached his
right, where he's like stagnant. And it's kind of a really cool part of this too is kind of Joe's thing all about like stillness and like just being able to kind of find that place of like peace wherever you are. And like the value of silence kind of in as it relates to kind of, being deaf. And he's just like too restless. He's fixing like shutters or siding or whatever. And it's like just be able to be still and not do anything. And it's kind of a weird thing as like an audience member because you're used to rooting for characters to like take action and like do things. And it's weird because really what he needed was to be able to just like find peace in himself and just like hang out at the community. And it's like, dude, take the job there, because this whole music thing, I don't know, you're like really nervous when he's starting to sell everything, because you're like, bro, we don't know like if you can pull this off. But he's taking action, and we feel like, yeah, you got to get your life together, man. But he just took the wrong kind of method to get there.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. What do you think the purpose of Joe's writing experiment, his assignment for Ruben, was to just sit in a room and just sit there until he couldn't sit any longer, and then when he couldn't sit any longer, he said, "Write until you can just sit there." Like, what was the point of that? Was it to just, you think that's an exercise in being deaf, is learning to accept the stillness?
Yeah, because I think Ruben's whole thing is trying to get his hearing back. And it's like, no, the only way you're going to be able to express yourself is through sign language and through writing. So, like, you can't rely on anything else, and you have to be able to deal with that silence. But I feel like even if you're not deaf, that would probably be, like, a good thing to do.
I was thinking that, too. I was like, I wonder what I would
be a good, like,
write.
Character. Like, if you were acting as a character, that would be kind of an interesting thing to do as well.
It's kind of, yeah. I wonder, it just kind of makes you wonder, like, what would you actually write? If you woke up at 5 a.m. and sat in a room with nothing but a cup of coffee and a blank sheet of paper.
And a donut.
What would you, and a smashed up donut. Not even a glazed donut. Just
just plain.
Bland,
my parents
plain
actually
donut.
love plain donuts right now.
Your parents,
they don't do
come
the
on,
writing exercises, but they definitely coffee and donuts in the morning.
Oh, what are they doing? Plain. I guess they're meant for dipping.
Little, just, palate cleanser at this point. Listen, I don't understand it, but I don't know.
We should try it. We should try it and report back to each other what happened. I would
probably just fall asleep. I love when when he's like pissed off in the room, he takes a sip of coffee, just goes, nice. I think
good coffee.
Yeah, good coffee. Just nice.
I wish I had coffee that good.
Because in the script, you can tell with some of the anger, like freak out scenes, like with the phone call and some of that, like, I think you can tell Riz actually like paraphrased, and I think he did it better. Some of it's a little more awkward and a little more like a lot more like profanity and stuff. And I think Riz kind of took the idea of him being angry and really made it feel a lot more real. It was cool reading the script, and it seemed a little more kind of jumbled. And I think Riz really getting into this character really just like embodied it. And I feel like they probably just gave him a little bit more like free reign when he was on camera by himself to kind of just feel out the scene. And I think it really worked.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you want to talk about his commitment, besides learning to play drums and learning to speak ASL, learning to sign, I mean, on set during his deaf scenes, like, he wore blockers in his ears so that he couldn't fully hear people. I mean, that's pretty amazing for an actor to go to that length. But I think, again, like, it was so effective. Like, I so fully believed the panic that he felt. And this is the other thing. Like, I know it's cliche for every Oscar-nominated movie and every best actor or actress to have a big freak-out scene.
Yeah.
But, like, I actually felt this one.
Do you think
when he's in his RV and Lou wakes up to him stomping equipment and throwing stuff around the RV? Oh my god. And then the line was crazy. She's like, "You need help," and he's like, "What I need is a fucking gun in my mouth." I was like, damn, that's brutal. But I actually believed it, because there's a lot of Oscar nominated movies where I'm like, all right, they're doing the scene
for the clip,
from their
for
nose.
the like montage.
They're doing it for the clip. But I fully accepted Ruben as this character and as that person who's panicking because he's losing his hearing. And that speaks to his performance.
I would have liked to have seen him do drugs.
Okay, Matt.
But for, like, I don't know if I bought him as like a former heroin addict, where it was like, I don't know, just seeing him in the classroom and he seemed like too nice to kind of have like, I don't know, that kind of edge.
Oh no, dude, Matthew, I disagree with you there, buddy. I think his panic throughout the film is constant. Like, he is what I attribute to people who are addicts or former addicts. He's manic and he's like really squirrely. Like, he's always just kind of like jittering around. And we can tell in the opening scene that maybe he's translated some of that kind of manic behavior into a healthier lifestyle, because he's working out, he's preparing breakfast or whatever. but he still has that like edge of this guy is a little bit off.
Yeah, I could see him do heroin though.
Maybe just smoke a blunt every so often.
Yeah, no, that wouldn't do it for me either. Because like heroin, I feel like is like that is the king of like drugs in terms of like if you do that, you've reached like the precipice, you know?
Yeah, but at this point, he's 4 years sober. We meet him when he's 4 years sober.
Yeah.
So you don't think by that point he could have, recovered? Not fully, but to the
There
point
is
where
no
he's
recovery.
functioning as a touring musician.
Yeah. I think because we talk about how vulnerable he is, I don't know. I feel like if you were an actual addict, that would put you over the edge.
Well, I mean, the diner scene again, that's why Lou calls, I don't know who it
Hector.
is, his Hector. I don't know who he's supposed to be. His
I think manager or something.
Oh, really? I don't know.
A friend.
But that's why she's freaking out that he had a cigarette.
Right.
Because he's still, like, any addictive device or substance, she's scared that that'll trigger his addiction again into harder drugs.
Yeah.
I don't know. I bought that he could have been a heroin addict and he's 4 years sober, and so he's kind of had a chance to fix his life a little bit. But, if you didn't, then get out of here.
Man, I could be replaced. You know what? Yeah, fair enough. It's just because it wasn't like an immediate threat because it was like he was in the safe place. So you're like, this guy probably couldn't get heroin even if he wanted to.
Yeah, but they're all over the road and.
Well, yeah, but once he gets there,
was he at the deaf community?
Yeah, I did like the scene. I love in terms of like the best extras. I think the kid in the script, his name's Michael. I don't think they ever actually call him anything. The kid like on the slide.
Yep.
He becomes his little buddy. And it's interesting in the script. There's actually a scene like after school where that kid and Ruben are together, and like the teacher says like, "Oh yeah, Michael's dad's always late. Like you can go." And Ruben's like, "No, that's fine. I'll stay." And he kind of, I don't know. You don't get as much of like a mentorship thing in the movie, I guess, as much as in the script. But you still get like kind of the essence of him kind of connecting with these kids.
I do wish he had more of a mentorship role. I thought that was a little bit of a missed opportunity.
Yeah. I don't know. They must have cut it for if they didn't think it was important, or I don't know.
That's a bummer. That is one of my favorite scenes, though, when Ruben and the young kid are on opposite ends of the slides.
Mm-hmm.
Of the slide, and
yeah,
the young
you just
kid
feel
eventually
good,
just
man.
kind of puts his ear and feels the vibrations. It was a beautiful scene.
Also, like weird romantic
ahead.
energy between him and the teacher. Did you get any of that?
Oh, that was one of my questions, dude. I don't know if, like, was there anything in the script that was different, but I thought for sure that something was going to happen between Ruben and the young school teacher.
There actually was something in the script. Let me see if I can find
Really?
it. Not
Because
like
the glances and the tension between them was palpable.
cut through it with a knife.
Cut through. Yeah.
There's a
knife.
There's
yeah,
a
for sure.
moment in the script where she offers Ruben a ride, and he says he'll walk, and she like watches him walk away, and just like undresses him with her eyes. I'm just kidding, doesn't say that part, but
I wouldn't have mind seeing that.
but yeah, weird. I mean, could you? It's weird because like, would you not like him if he did? That was like a very poorly phrased
bit.
question, but.
I
Because
don't
really
know.
you get
I mean,
the sense, because Lou technically left, the idea of Lou leaving was because he wouldn't have gone if she was there.
Mm-hmm.
Like she had to leave to make sure it was his, which was really a risky thing because she could have like left and he could have just immediately gone and just like shot up somewhere. But like throughout the movie, you still get the sense that she cares about him. You get the emails and everything. You don't love her for performing alone. That was kind of a little betrayal, but not grounds for him to go make out with the teacher.
You think that was betrayal?
Like just a little bit. If she's bumming on her dad's like nice ass like Paris apartment, you know,
Paris money, baby.
she didn't have to do that.
Yeah, but I mean, like that's her living. That's what she does. I think it would have been more betrayal if she sent a video of her with another drummer.
Well, that's true.
I thought that might have happened.
Yeah, I thought they were gonna go like the like label was gonna like rebrand her as her own like solo act or something, which I wouldn't really have liked, but
Yeah.
it just seemed like it could have gone in that direction, and you have like the classic like bandmates start fighting kind of thing. Um, I don't know, hard
Cool.
to say, but I think I mean the teacher's not in it a lot, but she seemed like a nice gal.
It seemed kind of sorry, I was away from the mic. It seemed kind of like maybe they had more of a role for her and they cut out some of her scenes. Like that's how I kind of saw it.
Yeah,
Maybe they
that's
didn't.
probably
Maybe
true.
she was just supposed to be a school teacher.
Well,
Um,
I don't know actually, but
cool.
all right, so he goes to the school. He's learning ASL, and then he decides to like sell all his RV stuff and the RV like temporarily. And there's that really cool shot where you're looking like down like the you could call it the hallway of the RV that matched like the
Yeah.
one of the opening scene shots where they're in bed and now everything's just bare because like the walls were covered. They had all the sound equipment, all the like magazine covers and all that, and now it's just bare. I thought that was really cool.
I like how it almost made it feel like it was empty for like it was just like him staring at an empty RV for a good like 5 seconds until we see that there's other people in there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it gives us a moment to again like recall that opening shot of the RV of them sleeping in there after their first concert.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I mean,
It's like an invasion of privacy too, almost, because you feel like that was like their place, and it was weird to see some random dude in it.
yeah,
Brutal.
$26,000, dude. I don't know. Was that a good deal for that RV? It's
I
a
don't know
pretty
what
cool RV.
you
It's a tank.
you should have negotiated a little bit more.
He was like, because before that, like all these scenes were him being pretty friendly with everyone around the deaf community, and then like he was so rude, I guess, to the guy that was buying the RV.
You think?
Yeah.
Well, he's not deaf, so
No, I know, but it was just like the guy wrote down $26,000 and he turns it to Ruben, and Ruben is like, here's the deal, I'll sell it to you for that price if you let me come back within whatever 8 weeks and buy it back. And then the guy's like, why would you want to do that? And like obviously he's deaf, but Ruben is just like, I'm deaf, dude. I'm deaf. Take it or leave it. What's it gonna be? And I was like, damn,
he's a man on a mission, you know.
he's a businessman, dude.
doesn't wanna
He's straight
explain
to,
himself.
Straight to the point. He knows how to bargain.
Oh yeah, the art of the deal.
The deal. He's probably read that book.
Oh man, can you imagine? Just quick cutaway of him on a picnic table reading that. So he sells the RV. He does his little really cool phone thing that like transcribes the other person's talking. That was cool. Normally I'd say it's like a weird plot device to get him where he needs to go, but I'm assuming that exists in real life. He gets the surgery. Weird, because you feel like it's like a win for him, because you're like, all right, he's doing something, but at the same time, it comes to where he has to tell Joe, and I'm assuming this is the scene you're talking about as one of your favorite ones that Joe kind of carries.
Yeah.
It's definitely
Before we
mine.
get there, we're led to believe that this commune, this deaf community, is way out in the middle of nowhere. It's peaceful, it's quiet, and this guy walked all the way to a hospital that does these surgeries.
Yeah,
I don't know. At Steve, I was like, wow, this guy.
could have called a
You have
cab
to
or
assume
something.
that
I
was
guess
a
I don't
long
know.
walk. Maybe
Well-
we see him walking away though, and then we see him walking back.
You know, it's actually crazy too. The his friend. I don't think they give her a name in the movie. It's Jen in the script. The the one he draws the like painting, the whatever tattoo for.
Yeah.
Actually, like when she goes out to sell his stuff, like she like leaves. She's leaving permanently from the community, and actually like ODs, like almost
Whoa.
right away, and like loses all of his money because she buys drugs with it.
That was in the script?
Yeah. Left that out of the film.
Yeah, that's that
Would
would have
just
been
be like a-
quite the
Yeah, it's brutal.
shift.
Yeah.
Then what does he do? How does he get the cochlear implants?
Well, I guess he still like sells the RV or whatever. So I think they make it like he sells the RV to cover it or something. I don't know.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
quite the
it's
turn
a
of
weird,
events.
weird turn of just
She was
like.
cool. She was wearing a Cape Cod sweatshirt in the opening when we first meet her.
So still not New England, I guess.
Still
but
not
like
New England,
actually,
even though absolutely we're blue. And then they also have, the other thing is totally off topic, but they have foghorns that go off every so often.
they probably have is there like a bay nearby or something?
Does that look like a bay? To me, I was like, this is like out in,
The
I thought it was like
boonies.
Western Mass or up in
Yeah.
Vermont or something. It looked like just a quiet mountain community.
Yeah,
And
I
now
thought it
it's
was too.
Virginia by the coast. I don't know. Whatever. That doesn't matter.
Well,
All right.
it does, Steven. It all matters.
Okay. So, first of all, it's a little bit weird to me that he, I guess we're just supposed to believe that he's a little bit stubborn, that he wouldn't research what cochlear implants actually do before he gets them. I know,
Or
I know
what
a
they
deaf person
sound
obviously
like.
can't listen to what a cochlear implant will sound like, but the fact that like
Well, the
all you
Amazon
gotta do
reviews
is
have
look
to be
up cochlear
terrible.
implants and realize that for a lot of people, a lot of deaf people prefer not having cochlear implants because the sound, well, A, because they've learned to function without them, and obviously as Joe says, like they don't view it as a handicap,
Right.
but B, cochlear implants don't return you to full sound.
Yeah.
They only bring back, and it's tricking your brain into thinking you're hearing sound. It doesn't actually
Right.
fix your ears.
And if you knew that going into this movie, it'd almost be like a tragedy where you like know he's doing all this for like
Yeah.
the tinny, shitty sound that it's gonna get him. But without knowing
Yeah.
that, it's such a gut punch.
Yeah.
When you're
So,
like,
I mean,
"Ooh, that's
the
not
other
what
thing,
we're doing this for."
cochlear implants, like a lot of people have brought up the fact that you would never just get cochlear implants and then be out and on your way, from the doctor's office. Like that never happens, because cochlear implants, the sound actually gets better over like a course of a year. Like the sound gets better because your brain gets used to it.
Right.
And we only see him for seemingly a week after he has his cochlear implants, but whatever.
You're like a cochlear
so he
implant
goes out.
expert now.
Actually, yeah, when I made my documentary, "You Are a Cyborg," check it out on
Yeah,
YouTube.
there you go.
Ruben is a cyborg, dude.
That's a good point, actually. This is a
But
sci-fi
yeah, we
movie.
researched cochlear implants and found that a lot of deaf people, like Joe says, don't view it as necessary.
No, I think one of the big questions this movie asks towards the end is like, would you rather have them or not? But
Yeah, okay.
We'll get
so
there.
yes, so one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie, he gets his surgery and he comes back and meets Joe in Joe's kitchen, and Joe is sitting by the table, and it's early morning. First of all, the ambiance of this scene, like I feel like that's so underappreciated in a lot of films, and especially in this one, it's so beautiful. Like there's birds chirping, we see the early morning, the fog and the dew is still coming, and like that played a huge part in why I love this scene, because it was like I kind of took it as these two are the only ones awake. Joe is doing his writing exercise, and Ruben is seemingly coming back thinking he just changed his life for the better.
you just walked 15 miles from the hospital.
He just walked across Virginia. But he comes back into the kitchen. Joe is writing, and they both take a seat. And the performance that both of them give, but particularly Joe, I mean, like, both times I watched this movie, this was my favorite scene by far. Like, nothing changed. I was like, this is an incredible scene. And if they were to give Paul Raci, who plays Joe, the Oscar, like, they would play this scene.
And it's
easily.
it's not the freak out scene you'd expect, but like within the context
No,
of the
it's
movie, it's so
subtle.
yeah.
It's awesome. I mean, yeah. So, I mean, shit, I lost my notes.
Oh my god. Well,
Okay.
go ahead.
So, the first reason I like this scene is because Ruben comes back in and is clearly happy. Like, he's eager to tell Joe that he got the surgery. He's like kind of smirking. It's, for me, I took it as like he's almost like proud to tell Joe that he got the surgery, that he's going to get the implants, and that he'll be able to hear again. And as we see Ruben kind of, excited to tell Joe, or maybe a little nervous, we see Joe, right when Ruben says, "I got the surgery, I did the deed," Joe takes a second and like looks down, and we can tell from that he's disappointed. Like, maybe not even disappointed, maybe that he's heartbroken, that he thought he could play a role in changing Ruben's life for the better, to learn to accept his deafness and embrace it. And he realizes that maybe he didn't break through Ruben at all, that Ruben is still just thinking about life after this community, the community that Joe spent his life dedicating to try and help people embrace deafness, and Ruben is trying to escape deafness in a sense.
Yeah. And this is before he's activated it, so like in Ruben's mind he's like, yeah dude, I'm getting it back, this is awesome. And for Joe it's like a total betrayal of like everything that he's established in this community. Like he told him at the beginning, like the founding principle is that we're trying to fix our minds, not our ears.
Yeah.
And then Ruben asks him for money, and Joe, like you can just tell like just how devastating it is for Joe to basically say like, you have to move out of here, like you don't represent like what we're trying to do here anymore.
Yeah.
And it's just brutal because after Ruben leaves, like they linger on Joe for a second, and you can just like tell on his face like
he's got a lip quivering. He lets out that like stuttered breath right at the end. You can tell that he's heartbroken that Ruben is he had to kick Ruben out.
Brutal.
That's my other question though. I think the question it raises for me is like, so Joe created a haven. You created a haven.
He's Professor X for deaf people.
Okay.
And addicts.
Addicts, deaf people. But okay, so he provides this community for the newly deaf, or for people that are living with deafness, a place where they can, learn to accept it, learn to live with it, and how to communicate with it. But the other part of the community is that he's offering it to recovering addicts.
Right.
So I don't know if everyone there was supposed to be an addict, but the opening scene where they're doing their kind of group talk and everyone goes around, the first 3 people we see say they were addicts. So I'm assuming the adults that are living there are addicts. So he offers it to deaf people, but also addicts. And when he tells Ruben that he can't stay because he says something to the effect of like, this house is built on the belief that being deaf isn't a handicap. It's not something that deaf people should look to fix, that they can learn to live with it, and that actually their quality of life can go up because of their deafness, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so he says, Ruben, I can't have you here because you'll be a reminder to everyone every time they see you that their deafness is something to be fixed because you are looking to fix it. So he kicks him out. But to me, the second time I watched this, the question was like, isn't Joe possibly putting Ruben, someone who he has cared a lot for, at greater risk by kicking him out? Because Ruben is now homeless, and he's a recovering addict that has no money and has to wait 4 whole weeks before he can actually activate his cochlear implants. So I don't know. I was torn of like, I feel where Joe is coming from. I think that's a good stance to have. Like, if you're in a community of like-minded people, you need to hold that together, because, if Ruben starts walking around and people see that he's looking to get out of this community, then, the community falls apart. But also the other half of that community is addiction. So Joe is putting Ruben seemingly at much higher risk of relapsing by kicking him out. Do you think he's right to kick him out?
Well, I mean, it's a difficult decision, I feel like, and the fact that you're unsure about it like reflects that. I mean, it is.
I think that's why Joe's performance is so incredible, because
Yeah.
I was like, is he right to kick him out? I genuinely don't know, because Joe was so torn. Like, you could tell that Paul Raci, the way he acted it, was so torn.
Some
about
ethical
whether he should
philosophy
kick this
here,
man out.
Stephen.
I'm sorry, this is like my favorite scene in the whole movie.
Yeah, it's a great scene. And I mean, it's like, do you value the individual or like the kind of like collective? Because the opposing side to that is if, Ruben is there with his implants, showing them off to everybody or whatever, and everyone's starting to chase that, and you don't know, like, obviously it's expensive, you don't know how that could change their thinking and affect their like mental health. And then it's like, well, do you sacrifice Ruben for the good of the group, or do you risk him like kind of being the bad apple and poisoning everyone else? I don't know. I think realistically, in like real life, you probably wouldn't do that. And you're like, bro, maybe he wears a beanie all the time and never talks about it.
You gotta keep that beanie on, Ruben.
Listen, I'll let you stay, but the beanie stays on.
The beanie stays on during sex.
Oh God. That's a different fan fiction scenario.
Yeah, Joe and Ruben.
It's tough because I think yeah, like it's really a dick move, but really I think Ruben
But
doing
I
that
don't
is
know.
a slap in the face, where he went to such extreme lengths to get the implants, and it's like Joe's like, "Have I taught you nothing?" It's a very Anakin Obi-Wan moment, you know. And Ruben just killed all the children and women,
At the hospital.
you know. Yeah.
Um, okay. Well, again, I think Joe's performance in that scene is alone. That scene alone is worthy of an Oscar for him. I just thought it was so beautiful and
Yeah.
like
Is it the last we
I don't
see
know.
of him?
Yeah, that's their last scene.
Brutal. I have a problem with that, but once we get into the third act, we'll discuss.
Okay. I mean, let me see if I have anything else on the second act.
Okay.
Okay, I had this as my favorite line, one of them.
Okay.
But the part we don't really have to keep this or whatever. But the part where Lou is leaving and she's like getting in the cab,
Mm-hmm.
and Ruben right before he closes the door to the cab, he goes, "You're my fucking heart."
Ugh.
And there's a part where I was just like, it was a powerful moment to most people, but to me, I could only hear like, "You're my fucking life. You're my life."
Oh God.
We should probably cut that. It's horrible, but I
that
thought
a
it was
lot.
funny as hell.
Well, yeah, that was kind
You're
of
my
cheese.
life.
It's a little cheese. But
Yeah, what are you gonna do?
that scene was like weird.
Love hurts, man. You know, Ruben, I feel you, dog.
And I would do anything for love. I actually thought that moment, I mean, we're like way back at the beginning, but when they're like doing like those weird conversations and all that, I thought that was all improv, but it's all in the script.
Wow.
I thought there was just like they just kind of were gonna drive and just like, yeah, just have a conversation about like random stuff. But that was in the script. I was surprised because that came across to me as pretty improv.
Yeah.
So I was taking a fool. I was a sucker.
Okay. So the other thing, they kind of, I think they do it best in the second act, and the sound design again in this film is incredible. And there's this certain technique that they keep using, which it's pretty obvious. Like if you're gonna make a movie about deafness, you'll use this technique. But the technique is going from what technically we would perceive as a deaf person hearing, which is that like that low hum, the buzz that's kind of happening in Ruben's ears,
Right.
and then cutting to what we hear, what hearing people are able to hear. Oh my god, dude, I got
Us
fucking
hearing
reflux.
people.
I'm gonna
Oh
vomit.
jeez.
Okay, but that sound technique of cutting from deafness to not deafness was used incredibly throughout the film. Like there were so many little moments where I was like, wow, they just use that again and again, but they use it so well. And the first time they use it that I really loved is Ruben's first dinner with the deaf community.
Uh-huh.
We enter the scene through Ruben's ears, so it's muted. All you hear is, you know, a little bit of muffled sounds and a little bit of like maybe silverware clanking together, and then there's all of a sudden just a rough sound cut. We kind of cut back camera wise to a wider angle where we see the whole table, and there's no sound bridge. There's no like transitioning from deafness to reality. If that's what I should call it, probably not. But we just
Deaf
cut
people aren't
from
living in
Ruben's
reality.
perspective. We cut from Ruben's perspective to just the sounds of the table being hit, to people, you know, whispering words or trying to get out words, chewing, glasses, you know, clanking together, and it's just like such a weird moment that I don't think I've ever seen anything or experienced anything like that in a film. Because again, there's so little representation of deafness in movies that I don't know. It was so you know, it's just a dinner scene, but it's a dinner scene with deaf people, and you don't see that ever.
Well, and what it does is it isolates him because he doesn't speak the language, so he's at a table
Yeah.
full of people he can't communicate with, and you just get the sense of like loneliness, you know?
Yeah.
Because even when you like hear from his perspective is one thing, but then when you pull out, you kind of realize, because you don't either. They don't subtitle, like we don't know what they're saying either, which is a cool piece of this. As well as if you don't speak the language, they don't start subtitling it until, you know, Ruben kind of understands it too.
Yeah.
Which is a cool technique to put us kind of in his shoes.
Yeah, and it flips the table. I think in a good way. Like, you know, for so many years, deaf people are the ones that can't understand chunks of the movie because they're not subtitled or they're not speaking
Right.
ASL, obviously. And all of a sudden, the audience that can hear is put in that position of being like, whoa, what's going on here? And put in a little bit of an uncomfortable situation. But I think it's good because I think we're supposed to relate that to being like Ruben, like where he's all of a sudden in this community where people are communicating in a different way than he can understand. And so it's taking us time, just like it's taking Ruben time to learn how to be part of this community and talk with these people. Yeah. And again, they cut to, it's a little bit later, but they cut to that same dinner scene, at a different night. And all of a sudden Ruben is able to communicate.
Yeah.
And it's just like it's just a beautiful scene of like, all of a sudden he can talk, they're talking across the table and someone spills a drink, whatever, and they're able to laugh. And like, that's when I was truly like, okay, Ruben is finally accepting this community and like enjoys these people and enjoys being here.
Yeah. It's a cool, steady, like progression, from him being there and kind of refusing to be a part of it. And then slowly as he kind of takes more of the classes, and then there's the thing where he like competes with that kid to do the like alphabet or whatever.
Yeah.
And you just get a sense that he's now kind of enjoying this life. And then, he gets the reminder of kind of the outside world when he goes back to the computer. I don't know what that tells you about technology. There's like a weird subrooted thing about that. But you do get that. And then obviously he kind of hits the obstacle and then that's what I'm saying, where like, I think he actually didn't think about the surgery for a little bit there, and then like the switch flipped, and then he became a man on a mission.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I do think there's a kind of a chunk in the middle of the second act where it does seem like he's loving, I don't know, maybe just enjoying being there, like he's learned to communicate. The scene where he's racing the younger person to do the ASL alphabet. And then before that, he's playing around with all the kids in the field. I just think they're two little beautiful scenes, and they're showing us, or when he's teaching them drums, which apparently that whole scene is improvised, which is kind of cool.
Oh yeah. I saw that somewhere.
Yeah, but it's just like, it kind of led you to believe that maybe Ruben is enjoying this life. Maybe it's so drastically different than his touring life as a heavy metal drummer that he needed a change like this, or he's excited to experience a change like this.
Yeah. Okay.
With regards to the sound technique that we talked about, again, going back to the slide scene, they do it again so well. Like, we're in the hum of the ears of Ruben as he's deaf, and the kid on the top of the slide, and we hear it really deep, like vibrations, and then they just cut to a wide again, and it's just Ruben tapping, rhythmically on the slide as the kid has his ear up against it.
Well, a lot of times that technique's kind of used for comedy, where you see something on like a small scale and then they pull it out and you're like, oh, ha ha ha, like it looks dumb. But it's cool, and this way with like the audio change too. And are we ready to go to Act 3?
Yeah, let's do it.
Because, this is towards the end, we'll kind of get to this point, but what they do is the reverse, where you hear like normal sound and you're dying to know like, what is Ruben hearing right now? What does this sound like to Ruben? As opposed to starting with him and going out. And that's when he's in Paris, because the third act takes place in Paris.
Well, there's also, before we get to Paris, you want to talk about the scene where he actually has his cochlear implants activated?
No, that's okay. I'm good. Just going to Paris. Thanks.
Okay, cool.
No, that's actually a brutal scene too.
That is one of the worst in the best possible way. Like, seriously, like, even though I knew that the sound wasn't going to be what he expected before he activated them, I don't know, it was so heartbreaking for him.
Yeah, you get the panic.
The look on his face where he first realizes that, like, I just sold everything that I've ever worked for went into putting these implants into my head, and they don't sound like I thought. Like, where is my hearing? And the panic on his face is just scary.
Then you still have hope, because it's like, oh yeah, let me just adjust it a couple times, and it gets like either worse or just like a different bad.
Yeah.
And you're like, bro. And you would think the doctor, she says like, yeah, you're going to have to get used to, like, this isn't hearing as you know. You're like, man, you probably could have mentioned that before you put these freaking things in.
That's where I think they just skip over the part that, like, cochlear implants take a while for you to be adjusted. And I believe you actually have to go back to the doctor and, like, they help you learn how to interpret sounds through your cochlear implant. So it's not, they just don't send you back out into the world.
Yeah.
Hey, go to Paris. Get out of here.
Get out of skedaddle.
Skedaddle with those implants. Okay.
You champ. Okay.
You want to talk about Paris?
I guess so. My first question.
How does he afford to get to
Yeah,
Paris? That's my question
okay.
for you.
Yeah, that was my question for
Is
you.
that yours?
So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Apparently we're kind of led to believe that the implants was kind of the big expenditure, but those tickets ain't cheap. I'll tell you that right now.
No, not at all. Especially if he's buying them 2 days out or something. This guy's taking Norwegian Airlines out there.
Yeah, dude, I don't know. He probably took they did show a plane. I was gonna say maybe he took like just kayaked or something. It was cheaper.
Classic movie. Just hopped on like a freight ship.
Yeah, no, I don't know. It was really jarring for me just to be like, oh wait, we were in Virginia. I mean, I thought it was New England, but we were in Virginia, and now we're just in Paris for some reason. Like, I don't understand why it couldn't have been like anywhere in the United States that would have been a little more.
Oh, I am with you 100%.
I don't.
Was so confused.
So bizarre.
All of a sudden, it cuts from the plane to like a harsh, just like siren, street noise through the cochlear implants. So again, it's kind of high pitched and
which makes sense. Like we want to get into what he can hear.
But I was just like, but again, you change not only the noise that's happening, but the location completely. I was like, what? Why are we in Paris?
Yeah.
Because I thought the same thing. I was like, I don't know if this is part of an actual story that like this is part of what they're trying to tell. But, like, why couldn't the dude have, like, been from Boston? Like, why did he have to go across the ocean to Paris?
Yeah, and it would have solved the, expense issue, and I think it would have just made more sense in general. Like, I don't know. And then
don't get me wrong, dude. I love Paris, man. I love that scene. Hey. I was like, damn, I want to go back.
Yeah. Just didn't fit the vibe. Was not vibes. And then he spends, like, I don't know, it seems like forever with her dad, who, I don't know what, he's in like a sweater with nothing under it. He seems to be like, he has a sick French kitchen. Man. I don't know. He seems like a celebrity. I thought he was like a celebrity chef or something because his kitchen was nice. He's like, I'll make you some nice eggs. I don't know how he got his money.
No, you need eggs.
And then he's like, oh yeah, by the way, Lou's mom killed herself, and then you took my daughter away from me, and I didn't like you, but now, I don't mind you. And you're like, wait a minute. What is all this Lou backstory? I thought this was like Ruben's story. I don't know why we need to know about this. I don't know why we're here. Who is this man?
Yeah, it was
like I was so confused,
why am I in this
man.
man's kitchen?
He's making us
quite
eggs.
A pivot, I won't lie. Yeah. As much as like I love anything that happens in Paris, and I was like, oh yeah, let's go to Paris. But at the same time, I was like, all right, this whole movie has taken place on the road or in this nice, peaceful little, haven in Virginia.
Right.
West Virginia or whatever. All of a sudden we're in Paris. Like, it took me out of it for a little bit.
Yeah.
Because it was such a drastic shift in
with
location.
No like motive, with no
Did
clear reason.
Did we even know that she lived in Paris?
No, we didn't. We didn't know she was. Maybe in the email she might have mentioned like the performance was in France. I'm not positive on that, but like, there's no like thing baked into the story that makes it seem necessary to have this take place in Paris. So, all right, there's that. And then he sees Lou for the first time. And I gotta admit, like, I forgot what Lou looked like.
Well, she looked completely different.
Yeah, but it was like we hadn't seen her for so long, and then I remember
bleached eyebrows in the beginning.
Yeah. Well, to each her own.
Rock and roll, baby.
But I remember when I went back through it the second time, I was like, oh yeah, that's what Lou looked like in the beginning. It was weird. It was cool that they both went through physical changes because Ruben shaves his head when he's just chilling at that motel, which was also kind of weird. He could afford the motel for however many weeks it took. And she's like different, and now she's like speaks French and is like doing, I don't know.
Like there was such a leap in location, but also in just like who Lou is. I don't know. For me, I was like, okay, she's just free spirit, an American, free-spirited American who's just roaming the country, and all of a sudden she's like in Paris with a dad who's rich, and I'm not like mad, like it didn't ruin the movie for me, but it was just kind of like, how did we get here?
I feel like it makes you I don't know. It makes you sympathize with her less to a degree because you feel like she didn't like lie to you really, because obviously Ruben knew that to some degree, but we didn't. And you're like, well, this was all fake. Like it felt like for Ruben, this whole like gypsy life or whatever was like his life, and he was invested in it. And for her, I guess she had this whole rich family she could rely on, and it was just kind of like a phase or something.
Yeah,
even though it was for a
definitely.
long time. But I don't know. It felt weird. Which maybe, I mean, Ruben probably kind of felt betrayed too.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, going back to the reunion, I was totally underwhelmed by the reunion.
I mean, where he's like in her room and she just shows up.
He just like stays like lying down, and then they just
What's
talk,
up?
and then just like hug, and I was like, dude, what?
Yeah, it was a little anticlimactic.
Because to me they were so codependent, and like the way they left each other was so dramatic.
Yeah.
I was like, there's no
Maybe
way
that's
they
the
would
point.
just.
Because she's
Maybe they've
moved on and she's like,
changed.
oh yeah, Ruben, you got your hearing back, sick, but I'm like doing my own thing now.
Oh, okay, that's a totally other thing. How did you feel about the ending? Like from just the party alone made me
Well-
mad. Like so it was her dad's birthday party. Is he some sort of again, maybe he's a celebrity with all these people there, but she was like, "Oh, I have to go down to the party." It's like, "Yeah, your long-term boyfriend is here." Like she didn't even invite him down.
No, she
She
didn't.
said,
It's like,
"I'll
you,
be
you
down
hang out
there
here.
if you need anything." I
Yeah,
was like,
that was
"Oh."
really weird.
Like, and then throughout the party, he tries to say hi to her, realizes that he can barely hear still, and then just goes and smokes a cigarette. And we have a couple shots of her. It looked like she was like networking with these people.
Dude,
she's
she's
like,
trying
"I'm
to find
sorry,
synergy, bro."
I have to go sort some things out." I was like, "What? Like, this is your boyfriend who you haven't seen in, I don't know how long we're supposed to believe it
Couple months,
was.
maybe.
Couple months, that has a dramatic life experience that he's just gone through, and you're just like, I'm sorry, but I got to network right
Well, and
now."
they like saved each other, you know?
Yeah,
all this
and I was like,
history.
dude, what? Like, is she just being a dick? Like,
Maybe she's embarrassed.
why? Because he's a cyborg?
Yeah. She's discriminatory towards cyborgs.
I don't know. I was a little upset about how she
Well, so was
reacted to
Ruben,
his
so
return.
maybe that's the point to some degree. But yeah, you definitely didn't like the direction they went in. Okay. So they have the party, and then she did the sing song thing. And then that's the
French
moment
kiss.
that her and her dad.
How come how come we didn't hear what it sounds like to French kiss through a cochlear implant?
That's why they were in Paris. That would have made sense. Because you
Yeah,
can only French
kiss.
kissing.
Piss. Oh, Maddie.
French piss is when you.
What is on your
Oh,
mind?
that's gross. Never mind. Poof. Right. So then she sings a song with her dad, and that's the moment I was talking about earlier, where you hear them singing, you're like, oh man, what does this sound like to Ruben? Like everything's relying on him being able to hear music properly,
Yep.
so he can play, and it just sounds like garbled garbage. And you're like,
Sounds like
poof,
shit.
you know, that checks out. That's what it would sound like. Brutal. Because just personally, just thinking of the idea of not being able to listen to music anymore would be devastating.
Terrifying.
So, it's a cool moment. I'll pitch to you what I think could have been a different third act once we get, like, through it all.
Okay.
But like the moment itself, you could have set that in a lot of different places where we hear music and then you hear it from his perspective. Like if I told you all the way up to this point, you're like, and then he hears music and it sucks. And then I say, oh yeah, it's also at Lou's dad's birthday party in Paris. You would be like, what are you talking about?
I thought the first time, because once I realized like what they were doing and like this is, he's hearing music again finally. Like once I realized that, I was like, why would they do it this way? Like why
Right.
would they be at his birthday party in Paris, a guy we don't know? Like I think he was good. I actually liked this scene where they were eating eggs together.
Yeah.
But I was like, I thought for sure it would be him watching her at one of her shows, one of her solo shows,
Okay. Yeah.
and him realizing like I can't play anymore.
Okay. Yeah.
Because it just doesn't sound like, to him it sounds painful almost. Because at the end of their song, the father and daughter song, the clapping was like
Ugh,
I had my volume pretty much up all the way, and it was painful to listen to.
it's a mistake, bro.
Yeah, I know. I got to turn my volume down, man. I don't want to lose my hearing.
Exactly. You're gonna end up like Ruben on a Paris bench alone.
Ruben.
If the dad was from Boston, it would have been a cool Boston name and accent. Ruben. So then they have their like bed moment, which was I actually thought was really cool in that you see on Ruben's face the realization that like she doesn't want to go back with you, dude, and live that life anymore. Like she wants to be here. And he finally just like surrenders to it and is like, that's okay, you know, like you saved me. We like played, you know, the role we needed to in each other's lives. And like, I guess that's that, which is another just like devastating moment.
Dude, it was brutal. That whole scene, them kissing, and then she's like, and like, I just need a glass of water, and like sips the water. And at that point, the camera, I don't know if it pans, it might just cut to his face. But again, it's like that, like settling in of like,
Just dread.
damn. Like, she doesn't want me or doesn't need me anymore. I don't know.
Yeah, like both. And it's weird because, I mean, he needs her to some degree. But I guess he comes to terms that he doesn't anymore.
I don't know. I don't know. To me, I wasn't, because the first time I watched it, I was almost mad at both of them. I was like, what are you doing? Like, because once he packs up his bags in that morning and leaves, I was like, what are you doing? Like, you know you can't survive on your own.
Well,
To me, their
could.
codependency, I know, dude. I was like,
The addiction thing, more now that he can speak and everything, like he can function, the addiction would be more of a problem, I would say. Although I don't know what other talents he has. He can fix siding. Like he's not just, I mean, I don't know if he has a college degree.
I don't know, man. I was mad at both of them
Yeah.
the first time I watched it.
Which is like, I guess because the situation just kind of sucks in itself. Where you're like, well, why are you mad at Ruben?
No, I was mad at Ruben
Because he didn't fight for her?
because he didn't fight. He wasn't, like, again, the ending is open-ended, very open-ended.
Yeah.
We don't know where he goes or what he's doing. But to me, it was like, dude, like you could have been like, hey, I need you, and like we can make a life in Paris, because at this point we believe the RV's gone, all of his equipment's gone, so like he's a nomad. So like if he loves her enough, like could have made a life for himself and for them in Paris, right? If she wants to be there.
Yeah. He's going to have to learn French sign
And it's just like
language.
he I mean, obviously it's good for the movie, but he leaves the next morning. Like he's only seen her again for
Yeah.
A day.
Yeah.
And he's out of there. Went for a pack of cigarettes and never came back.
He could have he's like, listen, guy, bum off your couch though. Like, I know we're not doing the music thing anymore, but like your dad makes dope eggs.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, they could have made it work, I guess. I don't know. You also don't get the sense that really either of them was that invested in the music too much.
Well, they just don't touch on the music a lot. I feel like that was purposeful on the director's part, was to focus on deafness and learning to deal with deafness.
I don't know, because you would think both of them, at the beginning at least, seemed really into doing this band thing, and by the end you kind of like, did you even care about it that much? Especially her, because she seems to not show any need to go back to it.
Yeah.
I don't know. But it ends with him on a bench, and he just turns off his implants.
I
to
really
drown
like
out
that ending.
Paris. Yeah.
So, let me explain.
Please.
Let me get comfortable. I love that ending. It frustrated me the first time I watched it because I was so angry that they were splitting up, and just like it was just so open-ended. I was like, what is he going to do? How is he going to... I was thinking too logistically. I was like, how is he going to get back?
He probably
if he gets
didn't
back,
get
is he going to go back to Virginia? Is he going to work on that? He's going to take Joe up, but he can't because he has the implants. So there's too much going through my head. But the second time around, I feel like I was able to see it a little bit more clearly. And that his panic throughout the film was pretty constant. Again, like I said, like he was, from my perspective, a manic, squirrely dude. He was a little bit all over the place all the time. And that was so accentuated by the panic that he felt when he started losing his hearing, and then when he lost his hearing.
Right.
And the only kind of brief reprieve from that was when he finally became comfortable in Joe's deaf community and finally learned how to communicate. But obviously that ends when he's kicked out. So the ending scene, it's that moment of stillness that Joe talked about. Because when Joe kicks him out, he says, I often wondered what you're doing in my study. Like, did you ever find any moments of stillness?
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think it's just a great callback of like, yeah, Ruben maybe just found that moment of stillness. Now, I don't believe that, because Joe originally says in those moments of stillness, that's where I find the kingdom of God, or that's where I feel it, or whatever. I don't believe that the director was trying to tell us that Ruben was going to become, a born-again Christian. But I do think it was conscious that the last sound Ruben heard was a church bell.
So you think he's going on like a religious
I don't think so, but I think it was just like, maybe Ruben was like, there's the church bell. Maybe this is what Joe was talking about.
Right.
I don't think Ruben is going to go and
That's
become a Christian or become religious. But I think it's that moment that Ruben is finally able to appreciate the stillness that Joe talked about.
Yeah. I did like the ending too. That church bell thing's really interesting. I didn't think about that.
Thanks.
That's why you're a cinema scholar.
I'm a cinema scholar. Welcome to the Cinema Scholars Podcast, guys. We dig deeper than the normal cinema podcast.
Talking about freaking religious imagery. Wow. I did like that kind of like final note and how it tied all into the stillness and everything. I will pitch you, I don't know if it would tie back into that ending, but here's an alternative third act for you.
Okay.
And this is kind of dependent. This is another thing they don't really disclose in the film, where it's like we don't know how big a kind of duo they are, like how big their fan base is. Because they have a record, right? At least one that is like they made in a studio. So we have to assume and people are at their show. I don't know if that's like I don't know what kind of gig that is. I don't know what kind of sense of, like, where did they?
They did on the wall in all their posters and whatnot. They had a couple magazine covers with them on it, so you assume they have some.
So
success.
what is their Spotify streams? You think, like, top song?
It's maybe top song is under 1 million.
Okay.
Spotify is
What?
I don't know.
Okay.
Great app. I love Spotify.
Yeah, I guess if you're on a magazine cover, I would give them like a couple million. All right, so okay. we'll say between 1 million and whatever. So, what if like Lou is still doing the music thing and their fans are upset that Ruben's back? They haven't told them like why Ruben's hasn't come back yet, and fans are like, "Come on, like you have shows and wherever you want it to be," and like Ruben really wants to come back, and so he does. And Lou's like, all right, we're going to make this thing work. You got the implants. Ruben doesn't say that like everything sounds like shit, and is like really like, all right, we're going to make this work. They like rehearse. Ruben's like, it's not great. It's pretty bad, but they don't want to disappoint their fans and everything. So they have like the concert, and that's where you have the moment of like what Ruben's hearing, and he's really trying to stay on beat and trying to kind of connect with Lou and have that like moment where like, I'm back, this is it, and then you pull off and it just like sounds terrible, and like the fans are all like, what is this, he's not back. And so you have all these like these new stakes where you lose like the band and like everything, and he realizes everything he's been working towards like isn't achievable. And so maybe he has a discussion with Lou, maybe they have the same moment that like, my heart's not in it anymore. And I think I would have liked to have seen him go back and apologize to Joe, and maybe, I get the whole like implants, maybe he can take off like the head things and like agree maybe to work at the school, work at the recovery center, and kind of now buy into the idea that it's not about fixing your hearing. Because I feel like we didn't really get that like kind of closure with Joe that I feel like he needed to, because I feel like if Ruben leaves that and leaves Joe with that like bad taste in his mouth, like that's, I don't know. I feel like he should have gone back.
Yeah,
he probably couldn't afford a ticket back.
That was a crazy third act that you created.
Thanks.
I had a totally different. I was just like, I was hoping. I totally simplified it. I was hoping that instead of getting up in the morning and packing his things and going,
Hmm.
I was hoping he would just get up and like take a walk and then take off that.
Yeah.
Like not leave Lou, you know,
Hmm.
them end on a better note and be like, we can work this out, but him
Right.
still realizing that maybe he's gonna embrace the stillness, the deafness, that he's ready to take Joe's advice.
Right. Well, it's
And that, like, that would have been more of a closure to me, not directly with him and Joe, but more just like with him mentally, like him
right.
emotionally being like, Joe, I understand you now. I'm sorry I couldn't have understood you then.
Because the thing
Through
is,
through taking off the implants. Sorry.
like, no, like, what is this? I'm kind of curious what you think. Like, what do you think this movie's like message is on deafness? Because I think it's a weird thing to be like, you, because he's a musician, and it's basically saying you can't do what you want to do because you're deaf in a way, where it's like, could he have potentially still been able to drum without being able to hear? You know? Because they say it's not a handicap, but he also realizes he'll never be able to play music again. And maybe that was good, and like he used music as like a crutch or something, and he needed to figure himself out. But I don't know. I feel like it gets kind of
Yeah.
complicated with that.
I don't know. I mean, I know Paul Raci talked a little bit about how representation is so important, obviously, and it's rarely represented. The deaf community is rarely represented. And so
Mm-hmm.
this film, I think one of the things that Paul Raci talked to the director about, Darius Martyr, that's his name, that's the director.
Mm-hmm.
Place Beyond the Pines, that's a good one.
Sure.
Yeah. Anyways, what Paul Raci talked to Darius about was like, if you're gonna shoot this and if you're gonna make it truly a good film that represents deafness correctly, like you need to caption it, like it needs to be captioned, because Paul Raci has
Right.
said in a couple interviews that he's a firm believer that all movies should be captioned because there's so many deaf and hard of hearing people out there
Like in theaters.
in theaters,
Yeah.
which is another discussion of like if every single movie should be, but you know. But the other thing he said was like, you need to have not just deaf actors, but you need to have deaf crew members, deaf assistants. Like you need to like truly
Mm-hmm.
work with them to understand how they think and how they go about, not just when they're on screen, but how they go about daily life.
Yeah.
So maybe that's starting a little bit from like what the message is, but I don't know. I feel like it's, again, even the dinner scene, like you so rarely see people that are deaf being represented in their daily life, unless
Yeah.
it's a news story on, the local news. You don't really hear that often. And
Yeah.
you definitely don't see a portrait of someone going through losing their hearing and then getting cochlear implants.
Right.
So I think
Yeah.
it's just opening people's eyes. And
Yeah. No, I definitely agree, and you definitely get the sense of like authenticity in that deaf community. I mean, this is obviously more of like a takeaway thing, so I mean, everyone will interpret it differently. I'm just kind of curious if it would have been more positive. I don't know. Maybe it's impossible. Maybe you couldn't be a drummer and be deaf. But I don't know. I thought I'd throw that out there. I don't know if there are any deaf drummers out there, but if there are, feel free to comment. The odds that this finds a deaf drummer. Yeah, well, I read an article too that said, this is more just because it's realistic, that most musicians lose their hearing more like gradually than like a sudden kind of like pop or whatever.
yeah,
Which would have been a different take, because you have that sense of dread where your hearing goes slower. It's kind of like Theory of Everything with Stephen Hawking, where his body kind of slowly deteriorates. That would have been kind of an interesting approach to this. You don't really get, you probably get more backstory on Lou actually, maybe than more like concrete backstory than Ruben, in that like you don't get a ton of like what he did in the past, or like kind of, I don't know, what led him to this point, other than kind of like the general stuff. And I think the article was arguing that basically if you made it more slow deterioration, then he would have been forced to make like harder decisions. I don't know if it would have been better, but it would have been a different take on it, I think.
yeah, I can definitely Get behind that.
And then he could have, I mean, if you did that too, then they probably would have kept playing gigs, and like he would be more and more self-destructive. You know?
Yeah. You know what's weird right now is this world is fucking crazy. I'm reading an article about how like even this film has received criticism, and like, you know, people are tweeting about how there's not enough representation. But then you look at someone like Paul Raci, who has been in the deaf community his entire life, who grew up with deaf parents, and who has said and considers ASL his first language.
Yeah.
And he has said this film is so great because it represents true deafness and like what it's like to be deaf.
And people disagree with that?
Can you ever do right when you choose to tackle a subject like this?
Probably not.
It's just like,
I mean, because everyone will turn to the people that it actually affects, and if people in the deaf community thinks it's good, then they get, you get like vetted or whatever. But if some deaf people say it's bad, then it's going to be equally problematic. I don't know.
Yeah.
They're saying what? That it wasn't authentic or something?
Let's see. The plotline that Ruben had to choose between getting a cochlear implant or staying in the community was particularly frustrating to Ren, a deaf cultural critic, who said via Twitter, "Why perpetuate that it's either resigning yourself to an isolated world or being a traitor with a cochlear implant? We are so beyond this argument."
Yeah, I mean, you say that, but then if it's cool with Joe,
oh man,
like he's in the scene, so I mean, if he had a problem with it, I mean,
yeah, we don't
not.
need to get into that. I just saw it.
Yeah,
I literally just looked up deaf
take.
drummer, and it had a top article was just like
The deaf
Sound of Metal is not representing right. Well, I loved it.
I don't know, man. I feel like if it feels like the characters have like dimension to them, and it's more than them just being like deaf. I mean, obviously, like Ruben's got a lot more going on than just being like deaf. He has, it's not defined by it, I mean, maybe you could argue he is because he has to choose between it and like his love of music and his girlfriend. I don't know. That's like that's tough. 'Cause it's weird when you get into like really deep interpretations that like 95% of people probably won't think about.
Yeah,
and then
true.
Once you publish an article about it, then everyone's like, oh, yeah, that might be true. But I think, obviously the intentions were good, and if I think Paul seems to be kind of a authority on the subject, that since he's a part of it, I think that gives it a lot of credence. So
yeah. The other thing is the closing song is beautiful. It's called Green, and it's by the guy who composed it, but also it's by Abraham Martyr, who I'm guessing is Darius's brother.
Yeah, I think he helped write
and he wrote the screenplay too. Yeah. But he has this song called Green. That's the closing credits song, and it's just the most beautiful song.
Not a metal song.
No, not a metal song at all. And I'm so bummed it's not on Spotify because I can't.
Yeah, because this could have been like Green Room meets Whiplash. Just by the
kind of, yeah.
On the surface, kind of. It's weird because I don't know. It's weird how like Riz, did all that drumming lessons and everything. He really doesn't drum that much.
That's what I'm saying. I mean,
and not like complicated, at least on the surface. Like he does a little bit at the beginning that might taking some practice, and then the bucket thing. But I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It was kind of shocking that they had him fully learn it, especially for such relatively small movie. I know it's had some money behind it, but
they went to Paris
compared
probably.
to the other movies that Riz Ahmed came off of.
Yeah,
I don't know. We didn't really talk. I know we've been rolling for a while now, but we didn't talk about the cinematography. But it is shot beautifully, and it's beautiful, like 35 millimeter, which I really appreciate.
It was. I mean, you could tell.
Quentin Tarantino would be proud.
Shoutouts.
He doesn't fuck with the digital.
Yeah, just a lot of cool like compositions too. Just like the way they set up like a lot of the RV stuff.
Yeah.
Some of the empty rooms, the use of color was really cool. especially like the opening shot. I think the film grain gives it a lot more texture.
Yeah,
just
well,
visually.
my favorite scene where Joe kicks out Ruben. I mean, I only noticed this the second time around, but there's like beautiful like film grain. Like you can actually see the flicker in the film
Oh,
grain
cool.
when it's on this close up before he, almost cries. It's beautiful.
It is beautiful.
Um,
Maybe he'll get
yeah.
nominated.
Any
You think?
closing thoughts on this? I really hope he gets nominated.
Yeah, I mean,
He talked in an interview about how he's been acting for over 30 years and how he's never had a role that's been notable. And he finally took this, and he knew that it was going to be something special.
yeah, I hope he gets nominated. I think Riz will. Um, Anything else? I mean, cinematography. I mean, we still have yet to see some of the other kind of Oscar discussion kind of movies.
That's true. It's hard to compare right now.
I think I don't know. The third act kind of derails the kind of writing for me to some degree.
You just don't like French people.
I love French people. They're great people. I've been to Paris, but I didn't
Matt
celebrate
speaks French, guys.
someone's dad's birthday. I had a croque
Matt
monsieur.
speaks French.
Croque monsieur. Yeah.
Sounds like Australian.
Of course. When I speak French, I go Australian.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I think this movie might get. Oh well, in sound design, I feel like has to be nominated.
It better.
So
It really
we're
better
looking
be.
at. I don't know. What do you think? Over under 4.5 nominations. What are you taking?
I mean, I hope over. My closing thoughts in this film are I really like it. I think it's a really interesting portrait as someone who doesn't know much, and I'm not ashamed to say that. I really didn't know much going into this about the deaf community, about what it's like to go deaf, about even the little things like the test you have to go through or the process of getting cochlear implants. I have done some research on that, but it's such a interesting look at something that I'm pretty scared of, to be honest.
Yeah, it's
and even
pretty
more
frightening.
scared of now, especially for both of us. And I know how much music means to both of us, and how not just listening but playing it, just like it does to Ruben in the movie. So it's really, I don't know, it makes you think.
Yeah, it really does.
I encourage people to watch this and really pay attention. You know me, I cannot stand when people just watch movies and flick through their phone and get distracted. Like, this is a movie that you need to sit down and just watch, because it's, again, the Oscar-worthy moments aren't big screaming scenes. Like, they're little nuanced things that you have to be fully in it to appreciate. I feel like I always just think about, like, if I reference or refer this to other people, like, would they like it? And I feel like a lot of people would be like, yeah, it was all right.
Yeah.
Because you really have to, like, sit and want to watch this and truly embrace, like, the performance that Riz and Paul Raci give.
And it's a
They're
shame it
both
wasn't
incredible.
in theaters, because I think it would have been a very cool experience with the sound design and just
Yeah.
the visual to see on a big screen. Because the streaming service does make it so much easier to just scroll through like Twitter while you're trying to pay attention. And I second
Yeah.
everything you said, man. I think this is definitely a film that demands your full attention, visually and
Yeah.
auditorily. So, with that said,
yeah.
what are you giving
Rock
it?
and roll, baby. I'm giving this film. Oh man, this is tough. I probably should have thought of this before. I'll give this a 7.5 out of 10.
Wow. Really? Okay.
What are you gonna give it up?
Based on your
4?
comments, no. I was thinking like 8. Based on your comments, I thought you were gonna go like way high.
Oh shit!
But if that's your, oof.
Cut that. 10 out of 10.
Okay. Well, it's just like what takes out that 2.5 for you?
I didn't know I was gonna be asked this. Oh shit!
Just Lou
I
and
don't
the
know. I
third
always
act.
compare it to, like, when I look at movies that I give a 9 or a 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
Like the Hereditaries.
Right.
Truly movies that just, like, okay, I gotta bump up my score because I have started looking at ASL more. I've been like, that's actually pretty incredible that, like, more people don't know ASL.
Right.
So it has lingered with me more than I maybe I gave it credit for. So I'll give it an 8 out of 10.
So you think like the linger factor?
To me, it's like if a movie moves you while you watch it, which this one did, but then also stays with you afterwards, like makes you
Yeah.
think about it, makes you think about the issues that they bring up, then it deserves more recognition.
Makes you appreciate your ears more.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, I'll give it 8 out of 10.
Well, I was gonna go with that maybe. So.
Damn it, Matt.
Because I was gonna say, I mean, awesome performances, well
Mm-hmm.
shot. Like you can't like the production's great. It's just the third act is just like freaking crazy to me.
That's fair.
Which would be my only like big detractor, really. Because it's tough because the premise itself lends itself to all different routes you could have taken. It's kind of interesting. This is the one they took. I think 8. And we'll have to see, come award season, how Sound of Metal, performs.
Yeah, I'm a fan of it. I think it should win some awards. Not that, I think awards are all that great, to be honest. I think a lot of films that don't win awards deserve them, but,
This would be a cool one that would, I feel like deserves recognition.
Yeah.
That almost, needs it to some degree just because, I don't know if many people will watch it without it getting, a lot of buzz in the award season.
Yeah, who knows?
So, that's Sound of Metal, dude. Thanks for listening.
And that's the Sound of Metal.